I'd like to call the January 18, 2023 Business Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Ms. Marion Petita. Here. Mr. Buchanan Charpentier.
Here.
Mr. Myron Wright.
Here.
Thank you, ma'am. Our first item of business is insurance, and we have A, to consider the renewal quotes for certain casualty and liability insurance policies that renew in February 2023 as recommended by Carmel Grow of Norris Insurance Consulting. Ms. Broke.
Good afternoon, and hello to a lot of new faces. I'm Carmel Bro. I am your insurance consultant. I kind of guide you through your insurance policy renewals as we go through them. And tonight, we're going to go through your first set of policies that are coming up for renewal, which is your liability package. It's your general liability, your automobile, your errors and omissions. We also have crime, equipment breakdown, are some of the policies that are renewing on February the 15th. I'll go through my spreadsheet, and I'm going to go through it rather quickly, but if you have questions along the way, please stop me. I'll be happy to answer your questions. And you'll notice all of my presentations, the spreadsheets will look very similar. This is my format that I use for all of them. Today, I'm going to be talking about column 4. This is the renewal being offered by your current agency, Jones Insurance Agency, and the current insurance carrier is Hudson Insurance Company. Your general liability policy has a $1 million limit, $2 million aggregate, with a $150,000 deductible or self-insured retention. There are no other changes to this policy, this package, for this renewal. So when you're going to go down the page, you're going to go down to line 14, item 14. That's where you see the annual premium. This year's premium is going to be $267,097, about a $25,000 increase in the overall premium. And this is because there has been a slight rate increase for this renewal, but we've also had some changes in exposure for this renewal. Student enrollment's up a little. When you're going to get to the auto section, you're going to see the number of insured units is up from 188 to 200. And then when we get to the comprehensive and collision, this is the physical damage part of the policy, you're going to see that the overall value of your fleet is up from 9.7 million to 10.3 million. So that's why we've had this increase. But go back real quick to section B, that's your auto liability. Again, it's going to be at $1 million limit with $150,000 deductible on that. Then section C is your comprehensive and collision. This is for all of your vehicles that you have covered now. We have value a little over $10 million. That premium is included. All these premiums are included in that $267,000. When you flip the page, section D, this is your board's management liability, or some people call it errors and omissions liability. Again, following along in column 4, your liability limit is going to be $1 million with a $2 million aggregate with $150,000 deductible, self-insured retention. And this covers your employment practices liability, your employee benefits liability, and also your sexual abuse and molestation liability. No changes at all to any of the terms and conditions of this policy. And that premium is also included in that package at $267,000 for the year. When you go down to section E, this is your crime insurance. Some people know it as employee fidelity or employee dishonesty coverage. You currently have it with Jones Agency. It's with Hanover Insurance Company. And it's the same limit as your expiring. You'll see there, it's the $1 million limit per occurrence. And then when you go down to line 7, your deductible is still at $10,000. Your premium, when you go to line 9, you'll see it remained the same at $7,774. And right under that, you'll see small print, year 3 of 3. This was actually a 3-year policy. So this is our beginning of our 3rd year of our final year of that policy. Then when you flip to page 3, this is your violent and malicious acts coverage. Again, 4th column, it is with Jones Agency, Lloyd's of London. Still the 1 million limit with a 1 million aggregate, a $15,000 deductible, and there are no other changes to this policy. The premium for this, under line 5, you'll see the annual premiums at $12,582. It's about $450 increase over expiring. And then when we go down, you'll see on the page, you'll see cyber liability listed there. We don't have quotes for that because we're still implementing, or should I say the school system is still implementing all of the requirements that the carriers are asking for. In particular, the multi-factor authentication, the MFAs. Once that's in place, all done and completed, then I'm going to come back to you and present the quotes to you to approve. When you go to page 4, this is your equipment breakdown. Again, column 4. It is with Larice Agency, with Travelers Insurance Company, and the same as expiring. You'll see the statement of values they've used. It's your current statement of values at $458 million. The actual limit that they're offering is $100 million. And then when you go down to line 14, the annual premium, there is a correction. What you see on the screen is $23,273. I had updated numbers come in this afternoon. So I need you to write down the new premium is going to be $25,120. $25,120. All other terms and conditions of that policy will remain the same. So when you get to the bottom, the grand total, where it shows $310,726, that number is actually $312,573. $312,573. So a total overall increase of about $27,000 over expiring. And I'm going to recommend that you go ahead and approve to renew these policies effective February 15th.
Will it go up?
Can we have a motion?
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Moved by Mr. Wright, second by Ms. Sharp and Jay. All right, now, Mark,
I was about to ask, once the cyber liability comes into effect, the number, grand total number is going to go up.
That number will change once the cyber comes in, because this number, this 312,000, does not include cyber at all. That's correct.
any other questions of Ms. Grove? Do you have any participation from the public or questions? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. Unanimous. All right, we move to item B, to consider updating insurance requirements for service providers as recommended by Mr. John Norris of Norris Risk Management LLC. And again, Ms. Carmel will do that for Mr. Norris, who is ill.
Yes, I'm so sorry he couldn't be here tonight. Mr. Jared, did you want to say anything before I go through the sheet with them?
Thank you. So we're coming in front of you tonight to ask that you accept our updated insurance requirements. A lot of COVID and moving past that, we have a lot of use of facilities and services from groups that would like to do work in our district, but due to our insurance requirements, they would really be coming out of pocket to give us these services. So with that being said, working with Mr. John Norris and our staff, we came together and came up with recommendations along the lines of risk exposure to be able to have these services done in our district. Ms. Pearl,
Yep, I'll explain some of the changes to you. What you're seeing in front of you is just the basic list of insurance requirements for the different types of vendors. There are 4 types of vendors, as you can see on the top, the vendor group. There's type 1, which is your equipment repair, janitorial services, electrical, plumbing services, chemical supply, that sort of thing. Type 2 are your building contractors, renovations, roads, sewer, etc. Type 3 are your professionals, which that's what we're going to talk about, the changes. And then type 4 is your board-owned land, lease of buildings, office space, use of facilities, that sort of thing. When you have a vendor that wants to come into the parish and do business with the school board or use one of your facilities, they have to provide insurance as part of their packet. They send their certificate of insurance on over to the school board, and y'all forward it on to Mr. Norris. He reviews it to make sure that it complies, their insurance policies comply with all the requirements that you approve here for them to do business here. What you see on this first page, there are no changes at all to any of these requirements. The only change that he's proposing is to the type 3, which is the professional. That's at, see page 2. This is the change that he's proposing. Professionals is a wide range of people. And so he would like to make a change and list out the professionals. And you'll see under 1 is the architects, engineers, medical doctors. And then if you go read across the page, you'll see their requirements, their minimum requirements for their insurance coverages in order to do business with this board. Under line 2, section 2, you're going to see that's insurance consultants and agents. That's your life, health, benefit agents and claims administrators. Property casualty consultants, agents, and claims administrators. And you're going to see the requirements for them there. Then we split out nurses, CPAs, auditors, financial advisors, education staffing and employee training, student behavioral health providers, and then the last item 7 is your emergency monitoring and disaster management people that want to come in. And what he has done is he has taken and looked at their actual risk exposure. The 2 highest exposures here are number 1, your architects, engineers, medical doctors, and number 7, your emergency monitoring and disaster management. So when you look across there, you will see that their requirements are higher than what the others are. The others, your consultants, your nurses, CPAs, he finds that it's a much lower risk for what they do. And so the amount of coverage that they're required to carry is less than. They don't have to have the umbrella like the others have to have the umbrella. Then the additional insured for the general liability, that will remain the same. That's the same as what you saw on the first page. That's required of all vendors. Also for the additional insured for the auto liability, that is the same. No changes there. And the rest, the workers' comp, everything else is also the same. The only thing he wants to do is break out professionals and show them each class and what would be required of them. And that's what he's asking, that you go ahead and approve, that we approve these and that they become effective, I believe, as of the February board meeting, once the board approves it.
Does the board, the members of the committee, have any questions about all of this? I know it's a lot of stuff to take in. Okay, if not, then we have a motion to accept this. We have Ms. Malbrook, Ms. Charpentier, and second by Mr. Wright. Do we have any public discussion? And any board member discussion? If not, we'll go ahead and vote. Passed unanimously. And thank you very much, Ms. Brody.
You're
Great
welcome.
job of explaining some very
Thank
hard
you.
issues.
And I'll just put this out there for all the new board members and even the old ones if you want a refresher. I'm available anytime. Just give me a call and I'll be happy to sit and meet and discuss, and so that it's not all coming at you at one time and Greek to you when I'm talking about the different insurance policies. I'll be happy to meet with anybody and go through them with you.
Appreciate that. Thank you, ma'am. All right, item C, to receive report from Buddy Leday of Gallagher Benefit Services on the status of the employee and retiree health plans for the calendar year of 2022. Mr. Leday.
Thank you, Ms. Petita. Buddy Leday, I'm with Gallagher Benefit Services. So just like Ms. Cornwell and Mr. Norris are your consultants on your property and casualty programs, we're consulted on the health insurance program and your employee benefits. Okay, so human capital insurance, that type of stuff. All right. What we're going to talk about today is just the performance of the plan last year, and it's not a deep dive. Okay, this is a really brief overview of how it performed. I'm going to touch on a few things, and there may be some questions you have. Like Ms. Bro mentioned, our office is right here in Thibodaux, 2000 Audubon Avenue, Suite E. We're easy to find. Ms. Ortiz, Mr. Martin, Ms. Fertitta, they all know how to get in touch with me, and we're readily available at one-on-ones and conversations about this more in depth. And I think eventually we'll do some training in-house on an in-service because there are a lot of pieces to how this works. It is a self-funded medical program, and so a lot of times initially you're going to ask the question, why are we self-funded versus fully insured? Why are we maybe not in the state program? I can answer all those questions. It does take some time, but all of those options have been looked at thoroughly over the last 15 to 20 years to see which is the best option to go forward. And at this point in time, it's to remain self-funded. What that means is that the claims come out of the school system and the contributions employees and retirees make to pay medical claims, buy reinsurance to protect you from really big claims, and pay an administrative fee to a provider to administer your claims and also use their network. In this case, it's Blue Cross Blue Shield. Okay? So there's those pieces to being self-funded. By doing that, you cut out the revenues stream that goes to the insurance company, so you're cutting out the insurance because there's only a small part, less than 5% of your cost is actually insurance. The rest is just funds. Okay? So that's why we do self-funded. Real brief overview. What we look at here is what we call our aggregate report. So for our new members, Mr. Wright, Ms. Sharp, and Shay, this is what we're going to look at every quarter, just to give an update of how we're running, okay? And so we go back way to 2013, and I want to give a history on this, but not tonight. I'll do that at another time because I know my land and facilities guys have got a report to do after a while too. But this goes through back to that time because it tells a story of why we got to where we are, okay? And why we made certain decisions along the way, why we changed PBM contracts, which is the pharmacy contracts, which we did this year. Now, we have heard that from some of your constituents and people who work here about that program, and I can answer any questions. Why we moved the retirees to a Medicare program a couple of years ago and where we saved money. So this tells the story, but we're just going to look at 2022 tonight. And as you can see in 2022, the first column, it shows you claims on a month-to-month basis. And I know it seems crazy that over $1 million every month of the school district's money and the employees' money goes to pay medical and pharmacy claims. Gross claims last year was $20,725,000. That's just claims. Specific reinsurance. Every belly button on the plan, so it's child, spouse, or employee, has what's called a $300,000 retention or specific deductible. Y'all pay the first $300,000 of expenses. After that, reinsurance kicks in. We've had claimants go up to $1 million in some years, and in that case, y'all would be responsible for the first $300,000, and over that you get reimbursed. So last year you had $416,000. Some of that was carryover from the previous year. This year, oddly enough, we had one person hit the specific in the actual calendar year that you'll get reimbursed on next quarter, and it was only by $9,000. It's a good thing in a way that your large claimants come down, but you had a whole bunch of people fall right below 300. So it was kind of an odd year where we didn't have these really, really, really big ones, but we had a bunch of pretty big ones. And so it ran up costs. So the drug rebates and subsidies, this was from the contract I have with Express Scripts. This is money you get back from the pharmaceutical companies. Next year will be with Elixir. Those numbers should go up because we renegotiated a better contract. The net claims is after the reimbursements and the rebates from the drug company. It was 18.6 million. Fixed costs, that's your reinsurance. So that's through BCS. That's your reinsurance provider for the $300,000 specific. And that's the fixed cost to use Blue Cross to administer your claims and use their network. The Humana premium, that's what we're paying for Humana for the Medicare Advantage program for retirees who are over 65 and Medicare eligible. Not all retirees are on there, only Medicare eligible employees over 65 and their dependents that are on the insurance. By going to that a few years ago, we have saved millions of dollars for the district. And we've had good reports, Ms. Marion, every time we talk about it. The Humana has worked really well, and they're actually going down on their premiums for next year. We got a rate decrease from them. The total annual cost, if we add the fixed cost plus those other costs, are $22.7 million. The average employee count, that's active employees on the plan, 1624. How much money are y'all getting from retirees and employees? $7,077,703. $10 million from the district. And as you can see, this additional board funding brings the school district's percentage of what they're paying up to 70% of the total cost of the plan. So at any time, if a teacher retiree says, how much of this are y'all actually covering for us? Y'all covering 70% of the total cost of the plan, okay? Which is, it's good. I mean, that's on par and average where it should be. But it does take more funds to make it better. So at any point in time, you get a call, the deductible's too high, or I want my co-pays to go down, or we paying too much for the insurance. Every time you would deduct that from the employee, it shifts the cost back to the system. So just keep those in mind as you might get those calls or questions. The monthly average shows at 1.8, so it went up 7.7%. It's a lot. But right now, medical trend analysis from our actuaries on pharmaceuticals is 9.1, and medical is about 6.2. So you're right on average where medical trend is. So while y'all getting running good, this is what medicine is costing these days. Genotherapy drugs, diabetes medications. I mean, I'm not singling out, but there are medications on this program that cost $300,000 a year just for medication. So these are the type of things that are driving up costs. They're life-saving techniques and drugs, but they're driving up costs for medical programs. So that's a basic rundown. We're going to get much deeper and granular next time, or maybe in an in-service training. But if you have any questions right now, let me know. Just so you know, the question I think on mine is, what are we looking like going into next year? Our projections for next year with the new pharmacy program was about $20.2 million in total annual cost. So we're hoping that with what we did with the drug differences and the extra money that was budgeted in the general fund for the program will cover those costs. So again, we're hoping we're on target this year, but if ever we want to make this cheaper, how do we do it? Either, less claims, more money going into the program from the district, the lower cost for the employees. Questions?
I do have one question. If you could just explain the separation of school board level funding versus additional funding. Just briefly.
So at the beginning, so we're going back a few years now. Okay, so we presented the board with the numbers of what we call what we should be funding at. Okay, we have not changed those numbers. All right, the hope was that eventually either claims would correct, okay, and bring us back to par. But when we don't hit target, then the school district has to pull from general fund to cover the difference. Okay, could we raise that number? We could, but what would happen in that case if we wanted to keep the percentages the same? It would probably, if you wanted to keep it the same, then all of a sudden employee rates would go up. And I will say that it's fact, and working with Mr. Martin since he's came on, it's his goal to not raise rates for employees or retirees at any point in time. So that's been discussed at length. So we're trying to make it better.
Any other questions? If not, we thank you for your report, Mr. Lede.
There you go, guys. Okay, you got it.
All right, moving on to finance. Item A, to consider authorizing advertising for bids on the following items needed by the Child Nutrition Department throughout the 2023-2024 school year as the need arises in compliance with regulations of the State Department of Education A, milk and milk products, B, bread, C, all other food items, D, janitorial and paper products, and E, cleaning of grease traps, F, concentrated detergents. Now, I think that would be.
Yes, good evening. Yes, this is just a standard protocol. I'll come before you every year this time to get permission for our advertisements so we can get our bids ready to go to purchase for next year.
All right, Ms. Lauren, thank you very much. Do we have a motion to accept? All right, second by Ms. All right, are there any questions from the public? Any questions from the board? If not, we'll vote. Motion carries. Item B, to consider authorizing advertisement for bids on small equipment and large equipment needed by the Child Nutrition Department throughout the 2023-24 school year as the need arises in compliance with the current bid laws. All right, thank you.
Same things applicable, yeah.
All right, do we have a motion? The motion is Ms. Charpentier, Mr. Wright, second. Any questions from the public? Any questions from the board? Not, let's vote. Votes unanimous. Item C, to consider authorizing advertisement for proposals for external auditing services and take appropriate action. I think Ms. LaFawn, is that you?
Yes, ma'am. We have been with LaPorte CPAs now for 5 years. Initially, they had a 3-year contract, and at the request of the district, we extended that contract for 2 years while we implemented some new GASB statements that were required as a part of our financial reporting. That concluded with the conclusion of the 2022 audit. So as is our standard practice, we're asking for permission to go out through an RFP process to seek an audit firm for our external audit services.
Motion, Mr. Wright, second, Ms. Charpentier. Any discussion, any questions from the public? Discussion from the board? If not, let's vote. Motion carries. Item D, to review proposals received for E-Rate Wide Area Network, WAN, and Internet access services, and take appropriate action. Mr. Jamie.
We have two proposals, one for internet service and one for WAN service. Contracts with previous vendors expired, going out for RFP, and the results are attached for you. So we would propose to award the internet service to Rev and the WAN service to
You have a motion? Yes. All right, Mr. Wright, second, Ms. Charpentier. Any questions from the public? Any questions or from the board or comments? If not, I noticed that this has been, we've separated them this time. Okay, and not, let's vote. Motion carried unanimously. E, to consider changes to the LaFouche Parish School Board salary schedules as presented by Mr. Kenny Delcom, Director of Secondary Education, and take appropriate action.
Yes, good evening. Tonight we're asking for 3 changes. I'll go over the first 2 together. These first 2 speak to the indexes that our principals and assistant principals or paid based on the level of school that they work at, elementary, middle, and high. The first proposal is asking you to create a fourth index for middle schools with over 600 students. This would raise that index from 0.57 to 0.60. At the same time, we're also asking to create an additional index level for middle school assistant principals with greater than 600 students. That change would be from 0.25 to 0.28. To give a little bit of context of where this request is coming from, currently we have 8 middle schools, and within those 8 middle schools, they have an average attendance of 340 students. Next August, we're going to open up Thibodeau Middle School, and right now we're anticipating an opening day enrollment of approximately 650 kids, and within the first 5 years of that school opening, attendance is projected to reach 800. So it's drastically different than what any of our middle schools are currently experiencing. The second request associated with this is simply to bring our high school principals in line with our other principals. Our elementary and middle school principals are contracted for 230 days at this time, whereas our high school principals are contracted for 240 days. The request is that we align all 3 levels of principals and make them 230 days, while also knowing, if you know anything about high school, you know that those guys work way more than 230 or 240 in a given school year with all of the things associated with being at a high school. That's the request.
Mr. Dr. Jake, second, Mr. Wright. Do you have any questions? I do have a comment. I think it's both. No, we're going to vote both on these together. Okay. Okay, good. And I think it's a good idea that we're proposing this for our middle school principals, because I've been hearing from everybody, my goodness, middle school with 800 students. But if you remember, a long time ago, when I first started teaching, we had 800 students at elementary schools at one time until they split them. But still, it's only fair that these people get more money, more compensated for more students. And also, it's really a good idea to change our principals, high school principals, to 230 days. All of our principals work a whole lot more than that. Anyway. All right, and any other questions or comments? Yes, Ms. Oh, Mr. Martin, I'm sorry.
No, I was about to ask, like, with a school that big, how many assistant principals?
Mr. Duncan,
I can take the question.
Good, okay.
Thank you, Ms. Wright. So it'll be more than the other middle schools. Right now, we're scheduled to have 2 assistant principals as opposed to 1 plus an administrative assistant. So in aggregate, the school will have 4 administrators.
Jamie. Yeah, I get you.
I agree with you. You know, our administrators at these schools a lot longer than I'm not saying they need to, but they put in 110% every day, and so it's a good thing.
Any other comments? Questions? If not, let's vote. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Letter F, to receive monthly budget to actual report for all major funds from the period through December 31st, 2022. Ms. LaFawn.
This is your normal monthly budget report. I'll spend just a moment to explain what we're reporting on for the benefit of our new members. Every year in our financial statements, the major funds are identified. These are based on the 2021 financial statement. Major funds were the general fund, the 1995 sales tax salary restricted fund, and the 2021 construction funds. This particular report covers the general fund and the sales tax salary restricted fund. The construction fund will be reported on at the next meeting during the Land and Facilities Committee meeting. The period is from July 1 through December 31, 2022. And at that time, we had collected 45.8% of the revenues for the general fund that we had budgeted. And we had expended or obligated 77.3% of the expenditures. And one thing I just want to call to your attention and make you aware of is that things don't flow evenly throughout the school year. So sometimes our revenues normally run way behind what the expenditures are. And the expenditures also include your encumbrances, which is the obligations set aside through either purchase order, contracts, or an encumbrance for the payroll expenses. So that includes all of that. For the sales tax salary restricted fund, we have received 38.7% of the budgeted revenues and expended 94% of the budgeted expenditures. And then on page 3, I just want to look at the revenues for the general fund just for a moment. The ad valorem taxes, you can see there we've collected only 3.5% of those revenues. Normally, our largest intake for that comes in the month of January. So that will be reported in next month's report. The sales and use taxes, we've collected 38.5% of what we had budgeted for the year. And then if you look down about the middle of the page, under the state revenues, the first line item is your MFP. We are running right in line with what we budgeted at 52.7% is what we've collected. On the expenditure side, which begins on page 4, you can see the expenditures provided for you by the functional areas. And currently, we have no expenditures who are running higher than budget levels, and we have none that we foresee as being a problem to exceed their budget by the end of the year. And if there are any questions, I'll be glad to answer those, or if you, once you review the report, it's lengthy, so once you review it, if you have a question, just let me know. Questions?
Comments? Not, we'll move on to letter G, receive a quarterly budget to actual reports, non-major governmental funds through December 31st, 2022.
Yes, ma'am. This is actually, I'll be given to you every quarter. The legislative auditor for the state has what they call state agreed upon procedures, which requires certain reporting and auditing functions on all of our funds. And one of the new requirements for this year is that we report quarterly to you on all of the other non-major governmental funds. So that's what this report covers. And if you look at the first page of the report, the debt service fund is the first one listed there. And you can see that we have it broken down by the revenues as well as the expenditures at a very high level. It is not nearly as detailed as your general fund. I don't think you all would appreciate it if I brought you a quarterly report on all of these funds as detailed as the general fund. But if there's anything contained in this report that you want further detail on, if you contact me, I will be glad to provide that. This report does cover only the funds that are not reimbursement based, which means it does not include our grant funds, because those are, you expend first based upon your budget, and then you seek reimbursement from the grantor. So those are not included. This does not include interfund transfers as well. This is just your direct expenses at this time. And the one thing I want to call your attention to is those funds that are sales tax based, which is your sales tax textbook fund, which is the second one listed, as well as your sales tax technology fund. Look at the revenue side, 120% of those revenues we budgeted conservatively, and we're going to exceed that budget for this year in the sales tax. So that's a very positive thing. On the next page, your professional and technical services in both the salary supplement fund and the retirement supplement fund have exceeded the budget by a small, less than 1% portion, and that is due to the audit costs, which are what is included in those professional services. Any questions?
No. Thank you very much for that report. Item H, receive financial report on Hurricane Ida response and recovery to date.
Yes, ma'am. The sum of expenditures to date for hurricane recovery is $64.8 million. We've also obligated through contracts another $26.1 million. Most of that you see there now is for the permanent repairs to our buildings. We have one small requisition out there for $315, bringing the sum total of recovery to date to $90.9 million. On the second chart, you can see the FEMA reimbursements that we've collected to date, $38.7 million. Of that, look at the very bottom of the report, the $602,000 was received in December. All of the rest had been previously received in September and October, and that is the report that goes to our trustee, Hancock Whitney Bank, on the hurricane recovery loan.
Any questions? Not Ms. Ortiz, thank you very much for all of these reports. All right, we're going to move on now to transportation. VAL Transportation monthly reports as outlined in the school bus service maintenance agreement. A, receive the vehicle repair activity for previous month, including the bus number and repairs performed. 2 weeks too.
Ms. Schwartz was not able to be with us tonight, so her reports are all there for you, for your review. And if you have any questions on the reports that she would normally provide, which takes care of several of those items there, please direct those to Mr. Hubble and he will get the answers for you.
Yes, sir.
I'd also like to add that we'll be reviewing the contents of this, being that we're combining the Transportation Committee with the Business Committee. So I'll be in conversation with the members of the board for what we want to see here. I think it's important that the board is made aware of the status of the fleet, but also those costs beyond the already contracted requirements for maintenance. So if there's something that is fixed in a bus that requires us to pay for it, we'll get a report on that. But what you see before you is hundreds and hundreds of work orders that are actually not cost to the school district. So it actually creates for a bit of a confusing environment. So we're going to streamline that. And I'll be in conversation with members of this committee to see exactly what we want reported as it relates to transportation.
Do we receive all of, do I read all of these reports?
Oh, no, ma'am, no.
Okay, so,
We'll take you through item E.
okay, so, all right, so we will just, we won't move down to item F. We
Yes,
can do
ma'am.
that? Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Item F, receive report of the transportation events from the previous month. Sir, Mr. Fiscal.
Thank you. Well, the January month started off great. Our goal is to hire one new driver per month, keep us in track with reaching our goal of 100 by the end of the school year. January, we added 3 new full-time contracted drivers and 3 sub-drivers for the Central area. Right now, we have 3 more drivers that are in training that hopefully by the end of February they'll start. So right now, January has been great. We're looking forward to the next 2 months that will be on the same pace to finish up the school year at a good point. Right now, we have every single routes covered in the parish. There's 3 routes that are open through consolidation. So what that means is that daily 3 routes have alternates being run on them, which the amount of drivers we've hired in the past year absorbs those alternates, and it's not a problem. Every student is picked up and dropped off, usually in a timely manner, depending on traffic and if there's any accidents that happen. A big change for us in the last month has been the new drivers, of course, which are just doing an amazing job, but also adding a new dispatcher, Ms. Kelly Tabor, who's been in our system before, and she's back with us again. And she has been a great professional to work with and really getting us to that next step of helping the drivers and supporting the drivers. Because without the drivers and the administrators on a daily basis, we wouldn't be at the level we're at right now in the department.
You're doing a really good job. I mean, I've never seen where we've only been short 3 drivers in a very long time. So
well,
something is going well.
Thank you. And we can hire up to 112 drivers. With the 3 routes, that means 3 routes are open right now. So, and those are packed buses. As we keep hiring, and our ultimate goal is to get to that 112, the amount of time en route for students, they'll get home quicker, to school in a timely manner, and there'll be less students on the buses, which is going to help out with route time.
Anybody else have any comments? If not, thank you very much. Good job. Since there is no other business to come before this committee, meeting is